Shut up and sit down.
Hi guys, this is Big Mech's Workshop and Paint Studio. I'm Dodge, and this week, thanks to our patrons, we are still painting stuff from the Shadow Spear box, and we are painting the new Obliterator models, which are absolutely awesome. It's about time GW got these guys right. I can't wait to see them in a new box set, not snap fit. We're going to paint this one in the fashion of the Iron Warriors, which I later come to regret, as it's very difficult with all this trim and there is so much detail on this model. But we'll get through it. It's going to be a long one, so get yourself a brew or a beer or something and get ready for this, because we are going to be here for at least half an hour. Now, as usual, we have used a Vallejo black primer. That's generally our standard, and I wanted to keep this to the brush, although you'd be better off using the airbrush. And we're going to start with Oily Steel by Model Colour. At this point you want to be picking out which plate you want which colour and which paint you want the hazard stripes. I actually left some of them black just so that I could change it up if I felt like it. I did know at this point what I wanted to do was have hazard stripes on that front shin. That front shin's very pronounced and that would look really decent. You can do the skin in any colour, but I am a fan of working with purple pinks. I thought I'd stick with what I knew, and I thought the purple would contrast nicely, so we're using Demonite Hide by Games Workshop to start blending the skin, and as purple will contrast with the yellow stripes, making them stand out a bit more. I thought that'd be a good base to start with. Now you can obviously do this and just the same technique, just grab another section of the Games Workshop colours or any other brand of colours with pinks in it, and just every time I use a particular colour, just change that colour out for one of a similar depth or darkness. Next I'm going to go over about 90% of that with a Slanesh Grey. Now this is all glazing techniques, and yeah, everything was going wrong with this video from point one. See, this is actually my mixing brush, which used to have a little bit of yellow tape around the end of it, and at some point the yellow tape has fallen off, and I've picked it up and been using it as a regular brush, wondering why my brush was absolutely knackered. It's because it's the wrong brush, I just didn't notice for a while. So yeah, that really made a couple of these layers rather patchy and put me off doing a lot of the model, but we'll fix him up by the end of this hopefully. Now I'm going to use a mixture of 90% Kislev Flesh by Games Workshop mixed with 40% Slanesh Grey. Got to keep this one thin, otherwise it won't blend at all because of the extreme change in colour. So practice your glazing. This is quite a good model to practice glazing on, although picking the direction where you start the paint is going to be quite difficult, as all the details are small details, but there's a lot of them, so the shapes are very small and hard to work with, whereas armour you can glaze over that because there's a nice big surface on it. After that, to start glazing up those blacks, I'm going to use German Grey by Model Colour, which for the past 2 videos now as well you've seen me using a similar technique to do black. That's simply because it works really well, and there's only so many ways I can highlight black up. So. But on that note, we also noticed with this model we have a lack of metallic paints now. We've used them all on videos. We need to buy a new metallic set, so we'll have a chat with our patrons and we'll probably be buying a new metallic set and some model that we can do use it on and really emphasise the paints. Now I'm going to switch to German Grey by Model Air, which got a slightly different hue to it, and I'm just going to go over the top of the German Grey by Model Colour. It is a very slight transition, but that means while I'm glazing that up, that's going to help quite a lot. And yeah, it is quite grey at the moment at the raised areas, but we're going to wash those down and clean them up later on. At this point I'm doing both the shoulder pads the same because I wasn't sure which one I wanted to do the hazard stripes on. Next it's German Grey by Model Air plus Light Grey by Model Air. And that's about as grey as that's going to go. As you can see, it's quite grey now in comparison, but we want the very tops of those to be quite light. Then when we wash and glaze them back down, It's not going to look as dramatic and as bright, but those blends are still going to be in there. Next, I'm going to start trying to position the hazard stripes. Now what I'm using here is Baylor Brown by Games Workshop, and what I decided to do was use the studs on the armour and try and line those up and basically put in a yellow mark on the stud, and then halfway in between the other stud put in a mark, and then using those to go across at a slight angle. So from the mid top where there is no stud to the bottom where there is a stud, and that's going to help angle those. Usually I would use Tamiya masking tape and an airbrush, but I was trying to do this one without the airbrush. This is a Winter Newton Series 7, and I'm just putting that line on very, very faint, and then what you do is you just thicken it up to the size that you need it. And that's what I ended up with. It's not as straight as I would have liked it to be, so what I do end up doing later on is just neatening that up. Some of them are slightly thicker than others. It's a very difficult thing to do freehand. So this one, if you're doing an Iron Warriors army, good luck to you and get plenty of practice with these. If you want to see a better hazard stripe colour scheme and technique, check out the Talos paint engine that we did in the 40k vehicle painting tutorial. I think it's in the vehicle one. After that, we've blended the hazard stripes in, and we did that before doing the rust now by Model Air Metallic, so that we can paint over it. One of the problems with doing hazard stripes on something with trim is it just makes it harder to get the brush where you want it to go, so it's better to paint the underneath layers and then paint over the yellow and blacks. To be honest, I probably should have gone straight black over the trim first, but I was on a bit of a time limit with this one, and I have been for the past 2 to 3 weeks, as Andy's working on a large commission for somebody that needs finishing. After that, I am using Steel Legion Drab by Games Workshop. I wanted to add some sort of payoff. I was going to bring this up all the way to Rackar Flesh, as you probably guessed if you're a regular viewer, but I didn't end up taking it that far, as I didn't think it was necessary with all the other colours on there. But this is, as you can tell, is very thin, because the sculpt for this loincloth cloak is actually really, really nice and will lend to the glazing itself and make that really, really easy for you. Basically what we'll do later on is just follow those shapes, and the model will do the rest of the work. And of course, as we're mucking about with metallics, we're going to be using a null oil wash. This null oil wash though is not going over the outer trim, we are just painting in all the silvers. Also, this is going to block in some black lines in between the rust colours and the steel colours. Not that that's a massive concern, as we can do a pin wash later on, because a model with this many metallics on it could really use a pin wash. It really helps bring out the details. No, my mistake, we are going over that as well. So yeah, we're going over the whole lot in null oil. Oh, I forgot about that. I wanted to blend the metallics a little bit more, because these feet are metallic, but they also have fleshy parts on. So we're going back to the Demonette hide by Games Workshop now, and glazing from the silver to the tips of the toes, which are all warped and have claws coming out of them. It's entirely up to you whether or not you do this. I just thought I'd give it a try and try and blend that silver and the flesh tones together. After the Demonette hide, as we did before, we're going to use the Kislev flesh and Demonette hide mix, working further and further towards the very tip of the foot. Now you can glaze this over the other layer of silver a bit further back than the Demonette hide, because it's a lighter colour, and that's going to still allow some of that silver to show through, and then it's going to have some depth where the purple is, which is what I'm working on here. Then we're going to add more Kislev flesh. Just slowly working closer and closer to those tips, around the toe area, and hopefully you can see the effect taking off there. I also found with this model there will be a lot of bits that you miss. constantly going back and forth with this model because you'll find a bit of pipe or a bit of chain or some other detail that you just haven't spotted or you thought was something else. So paint a few of these though, you'll know where everything is and probably get into the habit of double checking those areas. And at this point I believe we're just using Kislev flesh on its own, and we're going to highlight all of the flesh tone with that, including the toes. But I do like the gun and the way it blends into this. That is a very cool sculpt, so you want to glaze that nice and smooth and make sure it's really pronounced with the bright colours at the top. Give it some good depth to really exaggerate that distortion. Now after that we are on to Gunmetal by Modeler Metallic, which is slightly brighter than the oily steel, and I'm basically, oh no, it's darker than the oily steel if I remember. Yeah, we're painting that into the recess areas, about a quarter of the model, about a third of the metallic parts closer to the recesses. We're going to start painting that in. Even though we've done a null oil wash and everything, what we'll do is put another null oil wash on later on. I really wanted to bring out more depth, but there's other ways I would have done this as well. I could have just used an airbrush and to do all the silver work first, but I didn't want to do that. Now we're going to go even deeper down to black by Modeler Metallic and just bring in those shades even further. So using these particular Modeler Metallic colours is allowing me to put the shade where I want, whereas the wash just follows its normal pattern. This looks very similar, but you can keep in control of that and put the shade exactly where you want it and make it as dark as you need it to be. Now we're going to use Gold by Modeler Metallic plus a little bit of Rust by Modeler Metallic. I'm going to use that to start highlighting the trim. Now how I highlight the trim with this is basically painting in between the little notches and the studs. So we're doing all the raised areas, but if you just paint in between the studs, it's going to start giving a natural blend because we're mixing the paints, so it's very subtle, and it'll really accentuate the light and dark areas between the studs or whatever they are and the rest of the trim. And we're going to keep repeating that, but with different colours now. So where we've done them now, we're going to go even closer into the middle of those studs and use Modeler Metallic Gold just on its own. There's another thing I don't like about this model. I do not like the head and the way this snaps together with the head in there. There was no way really to sub-assemble this as far as I could tell, and that head's quite difficult to paint while it's in there. There's teeth and everything in the way, so it's a real nightmare. If you can figure out a way to sub-assemble it without leaving mould lines, then fair play, but I didn't figure it out. I was sort of in a rush to get through it all. Now we're going to use Filthy Brown by Game Colour, which is the one I used for the Gorkanaut, and I'm just going to start bringing up the yellows. So all they've had so far is a Baylor Brown. We're going to enrich those at the highlight sections, and the highlight sections for these will be the front of the shin and across the raised centre part of the shoulder pads. So you don't want to colour the whole thing in, you just want to colour the middle of the hazard stripes in, and then blend out to the top and the bottom. That way it gives the impression that light's reflecting back off of it. I'm also aware that these hazard stripes aren't perfectly straight. I wasn't 100% happy with them, but I also didn't want to repaint the whole thing. So next is Baneblade Brown as a highlight for our Steel Legion drab. And like I was saying earlier, this cloak's quite easy to follow. It's shaped in such a way that the brush just needs to follow it. So you're basically dragging from the dark areas to the light areas with barely anything left on your brush, and it'll just build up those layers over time and really exaggerate the shape. Now I'm using a very bizarre mix of Null Oil, Carroburg Crimson and Druscia Violet. The ratios I don't know, I'm sorry about that. You just have to eyeball it like I do and make it mixed so it looks like the one I'm using. It was a very hard ratio to get, I just kept adding bits, taking stuff out, so it's just a combination of all three, because I find that Carroburg Crimson or Druscia Violet on their own are either too red or the purple's far too purple. So adding them together with a little bit of Null Oil just gives us a nice wash there that's going to enrich those colours. Next it's time to start blending in some of the work that we've done on the trim, and we're going to use Reckless Flesh Shade watered down. You can be very sparing with this and then go and do a second layer and actually work it around the little ball joints on there and the little markings, work it into those areas, and that's really going to accentuate the lighting effects that we've done with the previous golds and rust effects. I was looking forward to this model, and then working on this much metallic, it was a nightmare. It really was. And like I said, that's why we realised we don't have enough metallic paints to vary things up, so we'll be getting some new ones soon. After that, it's Model Layer Metallic Gold with Games Workshop's Runelord Brass, and this is basically an edge highlight, or a really sharp highlight in those last few spots. I was struggling at this point, as you can tell, to pick a colour for the guns, because everything else was so metallic. But eventually Andy comes up with the idea that, well, these are living weapons pretty much, and we could probably just get away with them doing bone. And the bone actually works really well for this. So what you would do for your bone parts is Morning Fang Brown. There's a skull on the cloak, there's two skulls hanging off his right shoulder pad. But at this point we'd not decided that we were going to do the weapons in a bone colour yet. I actually mistook the bullets that go up into that bolt gun for spine, so I painted those in Morning Fang Brown originally anyway, which is part of where the idea came from. So why not have him just fire bone bullets at people? And again we're going back to Baneblade Brown and giving another highlight. I'm pretty sure there should have been a wash in there somewhere, guys. I must have done a wash off camera. It would have been a Agrax Earthshade wash, really watered down. I must have missed that bit of footage. So basically we're just bringing that back up, same way we did before, but now we've got a bit more depth and the wash is going to blend our colours together nicely. After that, bit of Zandri dust for the skulls. It's the same technique I use for most of the bone work that we do, because I wanted a warm bone to go with this. There's a lot of warm colour on this palette, but the purple's quite cold, so there's the contrast, along with the yellow contrasting the bright yellow hazard stripes. And don't forget that he's got some other skulls around on his right shoulder pad as well, as this model's full of details. We're also doing the bone parts on the toes, and all the teeth are going this colour as well. I decided to pick out the big metal cog parts or joins in Warp Block Bronze. I want to break those up so they weren't the same colour as the rest of the armour. Also, those parts of the piston that are attached to his foot, we're going to do those in Warp Block Bronze as well, otherwise we've just got a huge block of silver. Doesn't look very interesting and looks a bit flat, so we're going to give those a coat as well. If you want to, you can pick all these details out in black first, which will probably give you a smoother coat in the end, but I was rushing through this one as I've got plenty more to get through in this box. After that I'm going to go to Carrick Stone for another highlight on the cloak work. So far most of these paints have had 5 to 6 layers of paint, possibly more. It's all about layering up your paints and taking your time if you want to get a good result. And working those to any raised area from the shade upwards, just glazing those in. The hardest part to do in this cloak is the actual centre part where it blends into the shade, where you have to pull the brush back up the other way. Now what bronze is also going to get mixed with modular metallic rust, because the rust seems to be the staple for this entire palette, and it seems to be bringing everything together. We're only doing the top quarter of this piston part, but we're also going to use it to highlight the sides on his legs there with the big join or cog, and any of those other parts. You'll find a lot of those around the model. You've got to keep your eye out for them because they are very easy to miss. There's actually one attached to the bolt gun which I didn't notice till very close to finishing the model. Now I'm going to make a mix of null oil and Agrax Earthshade. This is because I didn't want to just go full on Agrax Earthshade and add more of a brown tone. That brown tone would take away from all that metallic work we've spent ages doing. So I want a more dark, blackish brown, no warmth to it, and against those colours for the cloak it really just looks dirty and more black than anything else. You don't want to let that pool in there, and if it does, just pull it out with the brush and dry it off. Dry your brush off even. Back to the rust by Model Air Metallic, and this is rust on its own. So you can see how these colour techniques are working for this. We're basically starting with a colour, mixing in some rust, and then mixing in some more rust until we finally finish with rust. Which is quite a warm colour, and I enjoy using the Model Air Metallic ranges, but this model really pushed it to the limit with my patience. There is a lot of metal. I'm using a straight Kislev flesh because I decided to bring up these colours a bit more. If you remember, not that long ago we did a wash which really enriched the colour on them and brought them to life. It really made them look more warped and more like they have blood flowing through them, and they're a bit warmer. But the Kislev flesh is there to just bring up those top highlights again and just reshape them where they may have gone a little bit too flat. Now for the pipes, I decided to just stick with the black highlight and go for German Grey by Model Colour. I didn't want to add blue pipes in or any other pipes, and I'd left them too long to start blending them in like the rest of the flesh. I wanted them to stand out a little bit, and we're going to build up those greys to a dawnstone eventually, just to give them a bit of shine. I find it's best to do this layer first, then put those silver parts in where the pipe's showing through, then go back over with this colour. That way you can neaten up around the edges. Like I've said on many videos, you work from the inside out and you'll find it a little bit easier. After that, now this is the part where I decided that Xandri Dust would work on the guns. And to be honest, it really did. It's pretty much going to be the same technique for these guns, except I'm going to bring them up a little bit lighter than the others, a little bit lighter than the other bone work that we've done, because they're a more prominent feature of the model and a bit more important. But yeah, it really does complement those bright yellows with it being a very pasty bone yellow. After the Xandri Dust, I'm going to use that same Agrax Earthshade and Null Oil wash. So you could have done this in the same step, but I was going back and forth, working it out, and then I added the end result together in order so I don't get my paints mixed up. So that's why you've got two parts of me doing pretty much the same colour scheme. Now the thing with this bit, if you're doing the Agrax Earthshade and Null Oil wash, is you can blend the bone into the metals as well now, because it's got an Agrax and a Null Oil, so that'll work really well around those edges where the steel starts and the guns popping out of it. Now this is Oshabti bone. We're going to bring that up quite bright, to be honest, and work around all those edges. I wish I'd done a bit more work on the melter gun, as it's got quite a few decent features on it. But I'm not used to painting melter guns. I didn't realise those two bits on the left and right side were probably some form of ammo chamber. Oh, sorry, that last one was Xandri dust. This is a Shabty bone over the top of it. My mistake. This is basically an edge highlight. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this one. As you can see, I've not done the metallic work on the top of that metal gun yet because that's going to come later on. I follow this technique through all of the guns. Again, working from the inside out so I don't get the paint where I don't want it. After that, I need to bring out this melter gun a little bit, so I'm going to do that with Macragge Blue. That's a pretty decent base paint by Games Workshop, and yeah, a couple of thin layers of that, and be very careful. That's why I'm using a Winsor Newton instead of my Games Workshop brush. We're going to completely block colour that, so it's a solid blue. Also going to do that with the weird cartridges that are sticking out the back of the Obliterator as well, and try and turn them into some form of glowing cylinders. After the Macragge Blue, make sure you clean your brush fully because we're going back to Avalanche Sunset and you don't want to make a green blend. And we're going to bring up those yellows ever so slightly, actually on the stripes now. On the stripes, at the side of the stripe that points up the highest, and that's going to give it a little bit more of a movement and a bit more of a dimension. I do like the idea of having the hazard stripes underneath the wrist part as well, even though it's tricky to do, but I do think that looks quite good. Next is a straight null oil, which is something you won't see me do very often, but I really want to darken down the work that I've just done on the German grey. I also want to make sure it sits in the recesses of all the pipes that are showing through. So really want to darken that down to give me a good base, but there's still going to be some of the German grey showing through. And again, make sure you go around the model a few times and don't miss anything, because I kept missing stuff and having to come back a lot. And while that's drying, we're going to use Alitok Blue. And what we're going to do here is just paint the centre part of the plasma gun. Just feather in from the left and right into the middle and then upwards. It's going to make a very steady transition to the point that there's a very nice sharp blue line at the top. But you won't achieve that effect till you put some more blues on. You've got to keep building it up in those layers step by step. Now I'm using Eschen Grey. No, sorry, German Grey by Model Air. I know that was already on there, but now we're going to just use it on the highlighted parts of the model. Basically all the top sides of the pipe that are facing upwards. And make sure you go around the outside of all those holes where the metallic parts are showing through as well. Be careful not to get it inside there because you'll have to repaint them again. Then it's going to be Eschen Grey, using the same sort of technique. As you can see, I've kept spotting pipes everywhere here. This is again a very watered down paint. I'm going to add bits to a pipe, let it set a bit, then come back and do another layer on that same pipe. And there's enough pipes here for you to go back and forth and not worry too much, it'll be dry by the time you get back round. We're just trying to make them look a little bit more three-dimensional. Now for the rope that's holding that skull there, I didn't really do much work at all. It's basically just a Doom Ball brown, and I think off camera I give it a wash. But I was... sorry. But I'm basically going to let the pin wash that we do later on finish that off and do the work for me. After that, I'm going to use Techless Blue, which is a bit brighter by Games Workshop, and just start working again, starting in the middle this time. But the paint is so thin that I won't get a hard line. I could have done an OSL on this, I just didn't fancy doing an OSL. Like I was saying, I'm trying to stick to just using the brush for this one. But plasma just takes a little bit of practice. If you've got a unit of plasma guns, or just a bunch of plasma guns in your box set, just practice painting those and then strip them off, paint them again. Quite an easy technique really. Now, something I always do when working with yellows is Burnt Umber by Game Air. This is very watered down, as you can tell. I'm basically using it as a wash, but the second I start pushing that into the recesses of the yellows, it starts to give that 40k weathered, dirty rust look. Warms up those colours, adds to the shade. If you haven't got a burnt umber in your collection, I really don't know what you're doing. You should be getting one. Go and buy one now. Burnt umber is awesome. Got a problem with a tank that you're weathering, burnt umber. It's a brilliant paint. It's as good as Agrax Earthshade by Games Workshop, possibly better. Gold by Model Air Metallic is what I decided to do for the metal guns. I did do a Warp Lock Bronze first, but like I said, I kept going back and forth with this, so a few things got missed off the camera. Just wanted to do a basic gold on that because I wanted it to sort of follow the bone colour, and this gold's actually quite a pasty gold. I wanted to follow the bone colour but then be metal as well, so it just looked a little bit different. Now to finish off the pipe work, I'm going to use Dawnstone to do all the edge highlights and just bring up the edges of those open holes that show the actual piping underneath it. You want to be very sparing with this. You can also really thin it down and do like the tiniest top highlights as well. And at this point, I would say I'm nearly finished, but it was more of a case of I'm bloody fed up with painting metallics. And then it's Model Air Metallic Steel, which I'm going to use to edge highlight all those steel parts so they contrast against those bone bits really well. I'm also going to use it as a very top highlight for some of the gold trim that we've done, although I think I did go a bit far, but we'll have a look at that in a minute when when the summary and the Lazy Susan rotation comes up. But yeah, I think I'd only use that in hindsight for the very, very top parts of the trim. It's very easy to go overboard with this colour. And there you have it, guys. That's after a pin wash and a clean up and then a matte varnish to tone it all back down. There's a few things I would have changed, possibly go back and take the time to change the hazard stripes, so I'm 100% happy with them because that really threw me off the model. I would have started putting more bone into it, definitely, because I really like the concept of having the bone in there, and if I'd have thought of that prior to starting the model, I think the result in the model would have looked a lot different. Also, we definitely need some more metallic colours. We've used most of them on this, so need some more decent metallic colours. Anyway, it was kind of fun. It was a definite challenge to paint this one with all those metallic parts. But we do hope you learnt something. I know I did. Don't paint Iron Warriors. They're a great pain. I gotta say thanks for watching, guys, and a massive thank you to our patrons who helped buy these models and the Shadow Spear set. So a big thank you to these guys: DWAC, Warren, Love Minis, the Alt Boys, Ludwig Hofbauer, Kit Lindquist, Acmas of Dawn, MTKX11 and Mark. Thank you so much for your support. We'll be getting even more models soon after we finish with this set. And, like I'm saying, some more paints. If you guys want to join them and get early access to all the videos or just help support the channel, links for our patrons in the description. We have links for the Outpost, who our affiliate link. We advertise them for the link in description, and they give us store credit, which goes towards getting more models, better equipment and stuff for the studio as well. So, thanks for watching, guys. Do hit like, do hit subscribe, and definitely share on Facebook or your other social media with your friends, because that helps us out a ton. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.